Okay, we're recording.
Right. Welcome everybody to the Lord Meher book reading. We're going to read from page number 2404 today. Thank you. Yes, Diana.
Age recounted. Baba's permanent women and men mandali were composed of people who dedicated their all to the beloved. They were completely dependent upon him. They were with him to lead their lives according to his pleasure without any desire of their own. That is why they could remain steadfast in their love and faith in him. One cannot conceive of the sacrifice and surrender of such close lovers. There were many who lived with Baba from time to time, but the connection of his closest mandali was quite different. His close ones who were with him were ground into dust, which they sacrificed at the altar of his feet. Jipra Baba, a rare type of must whom Baba had contacted in Nasirabad and the year before, was brought by Baba Das to Pimplegown on the 18th of April 1944. Baba worked with the must in seclusion for only one day and sent him back to his village the same night. The fifth plain must Ali Shah of Ahmednagar was brought to Pimplegown the same day, and Baba worked with him for a few days. Baidul would look after the must in the room between the men and women's sides. We have a footnote.
Yeah. This room was later used by Bao. Continue, please.
Invariably, when Baba would go there in the evenings, the kerosene lantern would be out. One evening, Baba became upset with Baidul. How negligent you are! Why don't you look after this old man? Baidul insisted that he lit the lamp each evening. That night, Baidul waited in the room itself. He was astounded when he saw the lamp do a complete flip and go out. He became somewhat frightened and informed Baba, who confirmed, "Yes, there is a spirit, but it won't hurt anyone." The next day, Ali Shah began abusing the ghost. "You always come and pester me. Get out." He took a sheet and began driving away the invisible spirit and chased it out of the room, apparently. One night, Baba sent Krishna to look in on Ali Shah. He found him in a vile temper and saw him overturn his kerosene lantern. Krishna picked up the lantern, stood it up properly, and went to inform Baba. Baba came to Ali Shah's room and sat with him for some time until his usual serene composure returned. The next day, Baba sent a telegram to Erich in Pune telling him to come to Pimplegowan. When he arrived, Baba instructed him to sleep close to him in his room. Erich did not believe in ghosts, and although Baba had explained to him many times about disembodied spirits, he found the whole idea hard to swallow. That night, as Erich was sleeping, he woke up and felt some heavy pressure on his chest, as if someone were sitting on his chest trying to choke him, although he could see no one. He struggled to free himself from the invisible intruder, but was unable to and could not utter a sound. He tossed and turned on the floor, sweating profusely, and Baba watched the struggle from his bed. After a short time, the spirit departed, and Baba asked, "Now, do you believe in ghosts?" Erich had learned his lesson and said, "I certainly do now." The next day, he was sent back to Pune. Baba had called him only to give him this experience. Meanwhile, Erich, Papa, Sadashiv Patil, and Jalbai had arranged another darshan program in Pune at the Ahilya Ashram Hall on Sunday, the 23rd of April, 1944. Baba arrived from Pimplegowan that morning by car with Adi Sr. and Deshmukh and gave darshan at the hall for 1 hour from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. About 300 bhaktas, lovers, came, mostly Zoroastrians from Bombay, Buda, Nasik, and Ahmednagar, most of whom had not seen the master for years. Many were newcomers who had heard of Baba through the lectures of Manak Mehta, who gave the welcome address. Chanji attended the program and later wrote this description to his thesis in Bombay. All were so happy to see dear Baba after a long period of separation. Although no darshan, no bowing down, and no prostration were the specific conditions imposed on all, and Baba sat there facing the gathering quite aloof, the clamor for a mere touch of his skirts, sadra, if not his person, and the eventual mad rush of all when he arose to leave were almost too touching and inspiring for description. The ecstatic smiles of all who rushed through the crowd to have a touch of his hands while he was passing by the crowds in the car conveyed what the magic of his profound love meant to everyone. In short, all this happened too perfectly and so unexpectedly that it amply compensated for the three postponements and the deep longing they all had for a month in anxious waiting of the blessed call. It was a scene typical of the love feast described in the Bible, revived in our times by the living Christ on earth. Baba also visited Baba House to meet Vera, Perrin, and their children. Gulnar and Sheru had been in Baba's contact since childhood. Baba would ask them, "Who am I?" "God," they chorused. "What does God look like?" "Like Baba," said Gulnar. "Bigger than even the sky," shouted Sheru. Baba asked, "Do you love me or your parents more?" "We love you more." "Why?" "Because you look so beautiful," they replied. Baba spent the night at Bindra House and returned to Pimplegown the next day. 4 days later, on Thursday, the 27th of April, 1944, Baba left at 7 a.m. to contact a must in the village of Vijaypur in Sarusha's new Chevrolet driven by Chabu. Baidul, Chanji, Nilu, and Pendu accompanied him. While passing through Rahata, Baba pointed out the tombs of Upasni Maharaj and Sai Baba and bowed his head to them from the car. The must Baba was hunting was Hari Giri Maharaj, but he could not be found in the town. A villager approached, informing them, "The must told me this morning that someone was going to come to him today, and it was not good for him to remain here. He has disappeared." Hindu and Baidul went to look for him, but despite their search of almost 3 hours, they could not find him. Baba instructed Chanji to approach some local people from Vijaypur and have them look for the must. They too failed, but they were paid for their efforts. Finally, Baba remarked, "If we don't find him by 4 o'clock, we'll go back." At 4:15, quite unexpectedly, a Muslim from the village approached them and told them the whereabouts of the must. Baba walked with the Muslim across a river, accompanied by Nilu and Chanji. After walking about a mile, they found the must surrounded by villagers at a farm. Upon seeing Baba, Hari Giri Maharaj said, "Let us go to our own abode." He took Baba by the hand and led him to the side of a temple where they could sit in private. When the Mandali had seen the must in the midst of a crowd, they were wondering how to coax him to a secluded spot, as Baba always wished seclusion when working with a must. Wonderfully, the must himself saved them the trouble. Within a short time, the must came back, followed by Baba. He sat down on the dry riverbed, and Baba sat next to him. The crowd drifted to where they were, and although Baba usually preferred to be left alone, this time he continued to work with the must in front of all the villagers. He pressed Haragiri Maharaj's legs for an hour and then declared that his work was done. I feel I'm done also reading to Baba.
Thank you so much. Yeah, maybe Marvin, would you like to read next?
Yep. Baba's work with the Musts not only pushed them forward in their journey along the inner planes, but also shifted some of the burden of his own universal work to them. Some Musts did not want this load transferred to their shoulders, and so they would try, like Haridgiri Maharaj, to evade Baba's contact. Baba returned to Pimplegown on the 27th and left for the village of Ali the next day with Baidul, Pendu, Kaka, and Chanji at 7 a.m. Chabu again drove, but this time they went in an old car due to the rough condition of the roads. In Ali, Baba contacted a short old yogi called Vasudev Swami, who resembled a crippled child. It was said that Vasudev never lay down to sleep, but would doze while seated, bending over a pillow. Baba brought this must-like yogi back with him to Pimpelgaon and worked with him for 3 days. He was sent back on 1st May with Baidul and Babadas in a public bus in specially reserved seats. Vasudev had done certain spiritual or yogic practices which had led him to become God mad. Despite that, Baba showed him the sweetest of affections and treated him like a lost, injured child. Meanwhile, Erich, Baidul, and Kaka had selected poor families according to Baba's instruction in the 4 towns of Narayan Gaon, Ale, Rajuri, and Junar, and had arranged for another poor program. Baba with Adi Sr. and Kaka left Pimplegown for Pune on Sunday, 7th May 1944. On the way, they stopped at Uttareshwar, where Baba met with a pujari, a Hindu priest, about the poor programs. From Pune, taking Erich and Jalbai with him, Baba reached Narayan Gaon that evening and stayed at the PWD Dak bungalow. Baida was waiting for them, and on the 8th kept one representative from each of the 16 poor families ready. Baba washed the feet of each person in a separate room, put his head on their feet, and gave them each rupees 50. Some beggars had also come to the Dak bungalow, and Baba gave each of them 2 rupees. The poor from Narangaon and Junar had been brought to the Dak bungalow in 2 buses, and they went back in the same conveyances. On 9th May, Baba proceeded to Rajuri, where 4 families from that village, in addition, 4 families from Ale were brought by buses. After washing their feet and bowing to them, Baba gave each family rupees 50 and 2 rupees to a few beggars who had also come. He then returned to Pimplegown via Pune. On the 15th, Baba spent the day at Meherabad. He left Meherazad at 8 a.m. with the women and spent the morning at Upper Meherabad with the women's group. At Lower Meherabad, he met individually with the Mandali from 3 to 6 o'clock and issued instructions to each. He returned to Meherazad at 7 in the evening. On Friday, 26 May, Baba again left Pimplegown for Khandwa with Baidul, Chanji, Erich, Ustaji, Jalbai, and Kaka. They traveled from Ahmednagar by train. Krishna, Nilu, Venkobareo, and Vishnu remained in Pimplegown to look after the women. Baba reached Khandwa the next morning and set out with Baidil and Gustaji to contact a must named Gorab Shah, who lived across from a mosque. Baba had contacted this mosque 3 years before and hinted that he was a highly advanced soul. The contact proved satisfactory, making Baba extremely happy. In the afternoon, after tea, in an exceptional mood, Baba remarked about the masters and saints, past and present, in Iran and India. They are the real flowers of humanity, flowers of spiritual power. In Iran, Shamsi Tabriz, Maulana Rami, and Hafiz were all perfect. Omar Khayyam was not God realized, but highly advanced. Musts are my best medium for work in the world, and that is why I exert myself so much to contact them, Baba revealed. In the meantime, Baba had sent Erich, Kaka, and Jalbai to find and collect the poor. After his work with Gorab Shah, Baba washed and laid his head on the feet of about 60 poor persons in the Jain Dharmashala near the bridge at Khandwa. He then handed a rupee coin to each. Whenever Baba would wash the feet of the poor, the entire operation was carried out with such precision that some remarked it was like a military exercise. It had to be. Baba was always in a great hurry and would not tolerate any wasted motions of time. Finding a suitable place, gathering the poor at a fixed time, heating water to wash their feet, and seeing that each person exited in an orderly manner after receiving prasad. All these and other chores took place simultaneously. Next page. In a bullock cart, Baba left Khandwa that night for the village of Borgaon to contact an advanced pilgrim called Shivanand Brahmachari. Known as a Swami, he seemed to recognize who Baba was and respectfully rose to his feet to greet Baba when he approached. He offered Baba food, which Baba declined. After a few minutes, Baba left quickly. Baba had said that whenever he is recognized by a must or saint for some reason, it makes his work more difficult, and hence he wished to leave at once. Returning to Khandwa at night, Baba set out the next day, the 28th, for the village of Sanawad. There he communed with the must Chameli Baba. Afterward, in a dharmashala at Barwa, Baba washed the feet of 40 poor persons and blessed them with his gift of love, symbolized by a 1 rupee coin. On 29 May, Baba went to Berhapur by bus, where he worked with a Harijan must named Rayoji Mama. This must was found at the train station. Although he appeared old and frail, he was a rather violent Jalali type. After being given food by Kaka, he gave Kaka a sound slap on the face. Rayoji was not an exceptional must, but Baba liked him. Baba and the Manali then boarded the Delhi Express and arrived in Ahmednagar at 4 p.m. on the 30th. After this must tour, Baba returned to Pimpalgaon. During this period, a Siamese cat named Geisha, had been given to Baba and stayed in Pimpalgaon with the women as a pet. Baba had directed Margaret to look after the cat. At the beginning of June 1944, it was pouring down rain one night when Baba suddenly ordered Margaret to throw the cat outside. Margaret hesitated and said, "But Baba, it's raining so hard." Baba gave in and left her room. The next night, the same scene reoccurred. In the pouring rain, Baba came to Margaret's room and ordered her to throw Gesu out. Again, Margaret started to say something when Baba frowned and snapped, "Whose cat is it anyway, yours or mine?" "Yours," she said, and did as she was told. Gesu was put outside. A few days later, Margaret read in the newspaper about D-Day, the launching of the Allied invasion at Normandy on June 6th, and realized the significance behind Baba's strange command. Coincidentally, It had been storming over the English Channel at that time, and there had been a discussion between Eisenhower and the other generals about whether to launch the crossing of nearly 3 million troops in view of the inclement weather.
Thank you. Rosalie, can you read next? Thank you.
The invasion, consisting of over 700 battleships and 4,000 landing craft, had already been postponed a day. Eisenhower had been firm and said something to the effect of, "Who's in command here anyway? You or me?" Paraphrasing Baba's words to Margaret almost exactly. Footnote.
Supposedly, the code words to the French resistance for the invasion to begin were throw the cat out in the rain. Continue, please.
Before Narina Machiavelli had left India 3 years before, Baba had directed her, quotes, "I have given you the order to find me God as God personal. You have found me. Go and tell this to the world. You will hear my voice within. You will hear no other voice." End quote. When Narina returned to America, she began giving a series of lectures on Baba in New York City and elsewhere. Her talks were so powerful and dynamic. Many persons came to know of Baba through them and also later to love him. Footnote.
Some followers in New York believed that Baba channeled thought transmissions through Norina. She would enter a trance like state, and the voice that spoke through Norina relayed Baba's messages. She said, but according to Kitty, Margaret, and Rano, Baba at one point remarked that Norina's claim that Baba was speaking through her in these public lectures were not his way of working, but that her talks did help his work anyhow. Uh, this is from Duncan's diary, 30th April 1943. Continue, please.
A universal spiritual center for Baba had not yet materialized in India. So besides Narina's publicity work, she and Elizabeth have been actively carrying out Baba's instructions to locate a suitable site for a center in America. Baba had laid down certain conditions to them before they left. Now it seemed that they had at last found the perfect spot. Here is Elizabeth's letter to Baba detailing the history of their search. June 4th, 1944. Dear Baba, you have received a number of cables from me about the property in South Carolina, which I hope you will accept for one of your spiritual centers in the United States. When I first cabled, the land had been promised to me by Father, but as it belonged to a company of which he was part owner, called the Myrtle Beach Farms Company, it took considerable time to be made available. In fact, the whole tract of 1,800 acres, which was used as a hunting and fishing preserve by all the partners of the company and others to whom they gave permission to use it, is now being divided up in a legal way, and Father's share is approximately 800 acres of this timberland and includes 2 lakes. This preserve is unique in the respect that it has 6 freshwater lakes fed by springs, which are so close to the Atlantic Ocean that everyone wonders how they can remain sweet water. We are five. Oh, yeah, we are five living at your center here now for the month of June. The Frank Eatons, Darwin Shaw, Norina, and myself. When Darwin has to return to work, John Bass will come down. We asked Malcolm Schloss, but he could not come all the way from California. And as you know, Jean Adriel is spending her time at present on some property which she hopes will become a retreat for you eventually, which is a short distance from Los Angeles. In fact, the plan for 5 spiritual centers in the USA was projected by you when you first came in 1931. And you told us you would use them for different spiritual activities. To outline the circumstances leading up to the South Carolina Center, when in June 1941, we left India, you told Norina and myself to look for a property in the USA that would be suitable for you and about 60 of your disciples. When you came, you gave 5 qualifications for the land, but did not say where the location should be in this country. They were, the place must have equable climate, virgin soil, ample water, soil that could be made self-sustaining to a large number of people, and the property should be given from the heart. Every place Norina and I went after we returned, we looked or inquired if there were such land available. Particularly, we looked in California. The one nearest to this description was at Fairfax, across the bay from San Francisco. A fine woman who is a Sufi leader and lived for some time in India offered to have you and your disciples stay there when you came. Perhaps you will, as her offer seemed to come from the heart. And we all agree that she is the most advanced and understanding soul we met out here. Her name is Rabia Martin. When we went there, she had a place set for you at the table, and everything was served to you first in devotional fashion. The property was on virgin soil in fertile country and seemed to have every qualification but one. The day we went there, it turned out to be very cold, which they always say in California is unusual. But we saw that it was not equable climate as far north as San Francisco, although we liked San Mateo as much last summer, which is near there. Last September, when we went to Los Angeles, we saw a number of properties with Jean, Malcolm, and Marky driving around in a car, but there seems to be a certain lack of water in this district. Then on my way back, I stopped off at Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, to visit the family place there from where I wrote you, and seeing the farms again after so many years, I realized how beautiful and fertile the country was there. But of course, the winters would be very cold and had not the equitable climate you wanted. Last winter, I went a number of times to Pinehurst, North Carolina, to see the family, as Mother had heart trouble and was staying there. I went over the peach orchard land and other property belonging to Father and others. This was equitable climate, although too hot in midsummer, but the soil was sandy and not suitable to growing many kinds of crops and had no lake or river. I remembered your having mentioned Myrtle Beach many times when we were in India and the possible stay of the group here. Should you go to the USA, and Norina and I plan to go down just when your timely letter dated November 12th, 1943, came from Margaret, which you will remember again mentioning Myrtle Beach. We went down last February 1944 and stayed at the house that Father had meanwhile given to Kenneth and myself, adjoining his house there. So many times I had thought, why did Father give me a house that was so nice in every way, except that it was not secluded enough to be useful to spiritual purposes or a meditative life? Being right on the beach over which anyone had the right to walk. Otherwise, it is large enough for a group of yours having 9 bedrooms and 5 baths, etc. This was Yupandoon, this house. We 5 stayed there for 3 days before we came out to your center property, where we are now living for the month of June, and we have accumulated supplies, etc., for our camp life in the woods. To go on with the story, I inquired about the hunting and fishing preserve last February, and Father took us out to see the 6 lakes. The main highway from Miami to New York goes through the property. But after one arrives, there is only a sandy little road which has shrunk into almost oblivion. It was the old King's Highway used by George Washington and Lafayette, and detoured near the lakes, as no doubt they camped and fished there. We were particularly enchanted by the largest lake, which was long and narrow and had a view of the ocean.
Thank you, Rosalie. Tim, could you read next?
Yes. Okay, starting at the top here.
Yeah.
Here certainly would be plenty of seclusion, and it seemed to have 4 of the qualifications you wanted. The 5th had to be worked out, the giving from the heart. As stated before, the land was not owned by Father as an individual, but as a partner of a company, nor had he thought of giving it away, or ever thought of its use beyond a hunting preserve, which was the reason he came to South Carolina in the first place about 40 years ago. Although many years ago, he had given up hunting due to his age. However, the Myrtle Beach Farms Company had anticipated that they might sell this lake district, which is 7 miles up from their other activities, as one project at some future date after the war. Norina and I at once saw the possibilities for your spiritual center, if only it could be obtained. And we were told that the one with the largest lake, with a mile of ocean front and squared off to the main highway, would be approximately 500 acres. Of course, I got enthusiastic, and that combined with other circumstances, such as my sister Virginia wanting very much to eventually own the Lake Geneva, Wisconsin farm, and talk at that time about Father making a will and leaving 1/3 of his property to each of his 3 children, I had the opportunity to say that I would like to own these 500 acres and concentrate my interests around Myrtle Beach instead of having a third slice of properties elsewhere. However, it would be much nicer to have it now than to wait until he died, and he would certainly have more pleasure in seeing me enjoy its use. Furthermore, it would be used for humanitarian purposes, as you had told me before leaving India that the greatest need after the war would be the care of homeless children, and one of your centers would be used for that purpose. I must say that Father was unusually responsive, as Myrtle Beach is his pet place, and he has many times in the past said that none of his children had shown any interest in it. I told him I had my spiritual interest to consider first in my life, as his religious interests are predominant in his life, and I would certainly take an interest in Myrtle Beach if I had some real interest along my own lines to work out here, such as this lake property where a center could be formed. I cannot help but feel that you are in back of it all, helping matters spiritually, because so many circumstances came into the situation to facilitate the dividing up of the 1,800 acres now, which could never have been worked out so easily if Father had passed on, due to the complications of his partnership interest and the different heirs of his estate later. However, it came out better than anyone could anticipate when I cabled you saying that Father had promised me 500 acres, as there will be another 300 acres which adjoins, which is contracted for but will not come into my possession by deed until another year. The 500 acres were actually deeded in my name on May 15th, 1944. It is my one desire to give the property to you forever for your spiritual cause. How best to do it can be decided when you come. You may be sure it will be given from the heart. Also, I am pleased to say Father gave it to me from the heart, and he knows that it will be used for your spiritual and humanitarian purposes eventually. It would be the dream of my life for you to have a great center here. I can only hope you find it useful for your universal cause. No name other than the Center for Meher Baba will be given it until you decide that too. Darwin Shaw and Frank Eaton are exploring the land today to find the highest spot with the largest trees, which would be the best place for a great auditorium in the days to come when you speak. As soon as Father definitely promised me the land, we ordered a 2-room house built with a screened-in porch, which we call your hut. The hut is on the hill from where you can see the lake and across to the ocean. It has great possibilities for development. Please write and let me know what you want us to do foremost and your general ideas about it all. Kindly tell me that you will make me happy by accepting it as soon as you come. In every thought and deed, it is yours now, Elizabeth. In a later letter during 1944, Elizabeth wrote to Baba, I forgot to mention that while in Santa Barbara, we motored over to see Krishnamurti at Ojai Valley. Norina knew him previously and had a good talk with him. He said it would be a privilege to meet you. I also gave a lecture in Chicago. You mentioned Chicago as a spiritually important city before we left India, but the turnout for my talk was not large. Baba cabled Narina on 13 July 1944. I'm happy to find in all your letters about Myrtle Beach everything that I personally and spiritually approve of and sanction. All my lovers should cooperate to make Myrtle Beach the spiritual abode for one and all. Meetings and darshans. According to the circular issued in March 1944, a meeting was held in June to resolve the problems of having the 200 signatories stay with Baba for 1 month. The out-of-town lovers arrived on Friday, 9 June 1944 and stayed at Meherabad. 24 men were present in the meeting, and it held the next day, the 10th, at 3 p.m. at Kushru Quarters, Ahmednagar. At the meeting, Baba stated, "I have called you, select members of my mandali, to discuss and decide certain points mentioned in my latest circular. All these points could easily have been settled and acted upon before the war or soon after the war began. I have kept on postponing the time for this, however, knowing that as the war progressed, these same problems would become more and more difficult to solve. Unless they were most difficult to solve, my work could not be done to perfection. Now the time has come when the work must be done." During the meeting, it was decided that Baba would visit Nagpur in September and Allahabad in October for darshan programs, and that the signatories would be with him for 1 month in Raipur in December. Due to the trouble in obtaining visas to Iran, it was decided that before the end of 1944, Baba would instead visit the no man's land of Peshawar for his spiritual work. Baba then turned to Chandji and remarked before those present, "You can attend the Ahmednagar and Allahabad programs if you are alive." Chandji said, "Baba is always making me the butt of his jokes like this," and everyone chuckled and took it lightly. But this time Baba wasn't joking. Chandji was sent to Nagpur and Raipur to make arrangements with Jal Karawala's help. The meeting ended at 7 p.m. and everyone returned to Meherabad. Baba was staying at Pimplegown but went to Meherabad the next day to see his lovers. All returned to their respective places on the 12th. Syed Sahib was an early Mandali member who had suggested the name Meher Baba in 1920. He had not been present at the meeting, but he came from Nasik to see Baba on 13 June and stayed at Meherabad for 2 days. Chandji returned to Ahmednagar and reported to Baba at Marazad on the 28th. He had seen bungalows in the Nagpur and Chindwara areas, but Baba preferred Raipur. Chandji was sent to Baba to make train reservations.
Thank you. Eva, would you like to read next?
Sure. Baba left Pimplegun for Bombay in Sarosha's car early in the morning on 7 July 1944 with Mehera, Mani, Meru, Rakma, a servant, and a 3-month puppy named Typhoon. Sarosh was driving and they arrived at noon and refreshed themselves at Kaka's sister Banu confectioner's apartment until 2:30 p.m. Don met Baba there at 2 o'clock. Goher joined them in Bombay, and they proceeded to Raipur by train. Among the men, Mandali, Baidu, Chandji, Kaka, Nailu, Vishnu, Krishna, and Venkoba Rao accompanied him. Gustaji and Masaji were in Pimplegun, and the rest of the Mandali in Meherabad. Margaret was also sent back to Meherabad, along with Jesu, the cat. In Raipur, Jai Karawala was the food commissioner and had made excellent arrangements for Baba and the women Mandali stay in Dungaj's bungalow. And footnote?
The men stayed separately in quarters near Rajkumar College. Continue, please.
But when Baba arrived
The platform was full of people seeking his darshan, despite Baba's specific instructions to the contrary. He and the women managed to get off the train from another side and hid behind a freight train before Jal whisked them away in a specially decorated car. In Raipur on 11 July, Baba gave an explanation of the powers of yogis, siddhis, compared to spiritual powers. Through different yogas, one can attain strange powers such as walking on water, talking with persons who are at a distance, becoming immune to snake venom through chanting mantras, etc. These powers, attained through yoga, contain different vibrations, which have different effects. Each yogi controls one particular vibration through which he is able to perform certain feats impossible for an ordinary human being. But the peculiarity of this yogic power is that it can control only one particular vibration. So that a yogi who, through his control of a certain vibration, can walk on water, can do nothing else. Likewise, one who can nullify the effects of the poison of a snake bite can do nothing other than that. All these different powers attained through yoga practices are phenomenal and hence transient and unreal. They have nothing to do with spirituality or spiritual powers, which are already latent in all, but manifest only in a select few ones who have realized the capital S self. All life depends on certain subtle vibrations, pran. Their connection is more universal through the ether. And footnote,
Gas, in its finest state in the mental world, is stage. Gas is a very fine state in the subtle world is pran, the vibration of ether, gross, gas, in a fine state can be accessed in the gross world through deep concentration. A yogi who attains the vibration of ether does not need to eat gross food, since the ether helps him to maintain his body. A yogi can thus live on ether alone. Similarly, poets, writers, and artists attain vibrations of subtle inspiration temporarily, inspiring them to write poems, epics, and create art. But they do not attain permanent experience, which can only be experienced in the subtle planes through the transformation into subtle consciousness. Yogis attain a different vibration from the subtle world in a more concentrated form as a power form of energy, but that too is temporary, although it can last for years. Continue, please.
for instance, a yogi wants to obtain a certain connection to something which he desires. Just as there are infinite varieties of things in the gross world, so there are an infinite variety of things in the subtle realm. A yogi gets hold of one of these things, powers, and gains control over the vibration pertaining to that particular thing. The spiritualists, true spiritual aspirants, saints, and masters, on the other hand, do not indulge in these petty playthings, because once realization of God is attained, all powers come to him and emanate from him. It is all bliss which he himself experiences, and that bliss permeates everything and flows from none other than himself. Chanji was not well in Rajpur, and Gohir was told to look after him. When Chanji had recovered somewhat, he was sent to Srinagar on 12 July to make advance arrangements. On Friday, 14 July 1944, accompanied by Kaka and Baidu, Baba set out from Raipur for must contacts in Amrauti, Ilachpur, Basim, Badnera, Tatanagar, and other places. In the village of Dham Gaon, Baba worked with a saint called Munksaji Maharaj. July is the middle of the monsoon season, and it was pouring down rain while Baba was hunting for musts. He had to walk 3 miles through the mud and slush to reach Munksaji, and when returning, had to travel 15 miles in a bullock cart over very rough roads. Munksaji Maharaj was famous throughout central India. When asked about Meher Baba, Munksaji Maharaj would refer to him as the emperor. Munksaji sat in a man-made cave that had been excavated to become his shrine after he died. Once a week, there was a festival in his honor at which he would give public darshan and at the same time provide free food to the multitude of poor people of the surrounding area. In Badnera, Baba contacted an old must called Badri Baba, who in a majzub-like state would for a day or two, sometimes longer, continue standing in a particular position without moving, absolutely still, like a stone idol or statue. Sometimes he would lie on the ground in one position without moving for 2 or 3 days. In the village of Karanjgaon near Elichpur, Baba again worked with Gulab Shah, whom Baba had first contacted in 1939 when the must was brought to Jabalpur Must Ashram. Gulab Shah was a wild and frenzied must saint of the 6th plane and was greatly revered. His reverence for Meher Baba was evident to all, as the saint would say in Baba's presence, "I am not fit to sit beside you."
Thank you, Eva.
You're welcome.
Hey, where's all that noise coming from?
I think it was Eva's answering machine.
Yeah, it's my answering machine.
Sorry. So let's continue. Vijayji, would you like to read next?
Yeah.
From you.
Another high meetings and darshans. Another high mast in Elichpur was Mastak Mia, who was always found sitting on a wall near the entrance to a mosque. Before entering to the mosque, the devout Muslims would kiss his hand and he would mock them. There is no one in the mosque to hear your prayers. Why do you go there? In Tata Nagar, Baba contacted Chunni Baba, who would daily eat an odd mixture of 2 ounces of tobacco mixed with lime. Baba worked with him in an abandoned air raid shelter. Baba also communed with a Mastani called Budhi, who was known for always chewing pan. She was very a teeny old woman. She offered pan to Baba, which he lovingly accepted and ate during his contact with her. Finishing his mast tour, Baba returned to Raipur on 21st or 22nd of July in 1944. I see. In April 1944, after meeting Baba at Pimpalgaon, Kaikobad Dastur had returned to Bombay and sold all his possessions in the belief that Baba was about to call him and his family to join the ashram. He saw Baba again at the meeting in June and had waiting for Baba's call ever since. But mentally he was becoming exceedingly restless and running out of patience, and finally decided that he would not join Baba if he were not called by August. Aware of Kaikobad's state, Baba sent him a telegram to come to Raipur on 26 July 1944. When he arrived, Baba instructed him to immediately return to Bombay, pack everything he owned, and move to Meherabad. Baba then sent word to Pendu and Pilamai, who were looking after the affairs of the man and woman Mandali at Meherabad. Kaikobad and his family arrived in Meherabad on the night of 31st and remained to the rest of their lives. Kaikobad's wife, Jarbai, 46, and their 3 daughters, Mehru, Gulu, and Jalu, Mehru 23, Gulu 21, Jalu 18, were kept with the other women on Meherabad Hill, and Kaikobad stayed in Lower Meherabad in a small cottage that was built for him on the spot of the old bathroom building. His son Ratan stayed in Ahmednagar and was given a job at the Sarosh Cinema operating the film projector. When Baba returned from his mast journey, Jal Kerawala asked permission to arrange a public darshan in Raipur, and Baba agreed. Jal began making preparations. The program was scheduled for the 6th of August, and Jal invited all the influential citizens of the district.
Thank you, Vijayji. Um, Sri Vani, would you like to read next?
Yes, Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Okay, start from here.
Deshmukh and Pankraj came from Nagpur to help, and Kohali leader arrived from Savnir. Vibhuti and Babadas were active in informing people about the darshan several days beforehand, but at the same time were quarreling among themselves. Baba found out and took them aside, admonishing them severely. Both of you love me to spread my love. You distribute handbills and messages without resting. But it is a wonder to me how you who inform and acquaint others of my love fight among yourselves. Whatever you wish to do it with honestly. Why fight and criticize each other? Humility is born of residue and precludes criticism of others. Honestly demands work without complaint and leaves the result to my divine will. Baba then asked,
Both to forgive, forget, and embrace, which they did.
which they did. Baba called Jalbai, Irich, and Adi Senior, to Raipur on Saturday, 5th August 1944. That evening, Deshmukh delivered an inspiring speech about Meher Baba, which made hundreds of citizens eager for his darshan. More read about the lecture the next day in the Nagpur Times. But suddenly, on the night of the 5th, Baba's health collapsed. The public darshan was scheduled to take place the next day, and the Jal Kerawala grew worried. He had invited many prominent people who had heard of Baba but who had never met him, including the Maharaja of Bagh Bahara and other important government officials. Jal was naturally anxious, but the consequences of cancelling the program. Baba informed him, "How can I give darshan now? I feel terrible. Cancel the whole affair." In a panic, Jal brought several different medicines and stacked them all on the table beside Baba's bed. But they had no effect, and Baba began vomiting. The following morning, throngs of people began coming to the bungalow for darshan. Calling Jal to him, Baba remarked, "I feel very, very weak. I cannot stand. I feel giddy. What am I to do?" Jal was in awkward position. Weeks of hard work had gone into preparing for the function. What was he to do? Were he to cancel the program, people would start backbiting him, as those invited were quite new to Baba. He also did not wish to see Baba's name slandered, because for days in the Gujarati newspapers there were articles of propaganda against Baba, misguiding the people of the city. Jal wished them to see Baba in person and judge for themselves whether all the allegations were true or false.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Such thoughts were racing through his mind when Baba gestured. "I will try for your sake. If I can sit for darshan, I will. Otherwise, I will return to my room." Holding Jal's hand, Baba sat up in bed with obvious difficulty. He then tentatively stood up and staggered a few paces. Jal's heart was racing and his hands trembled. But no sooner was Baba out of the room than, like a flash of light, he suddenly became energetic, and his face assumed its usual rosy glow. He strode rapidly to his seat on the dais, and his divine smile diffused rays of joy throughout the gathering. For Jal Kerawala, it was a unique experience, and a new understanding dawned upon him about the Master. The darshan went on from morning to evening, and Baba's smile was like nectar to those who approached him for darshan. The light of his divine splendor prevailed, pervaded Raipur as Qawwali singers entertained the crowd. In between, Baba gave spiritual explanations to the gathering. Almost 5,000 persons had Baba's darshan that day, and later a few came for individual interviews. One of these was Kunj Behari Chaube, who later translated all the master's discourses into Hindi. Dr. Baldev Prasad Mishra, principal of Bilaspur College, who had edited Chaube's work, also came very close to Baba at this time. The 3 hour darshan from 9 a.m. until noon seemed not to tire Baba in the least, and Jal Kerawala could only shake his head in amazement at Baba's divine Leela. There's a photograph uh, uh, from
Can you
Raipur,
please
this
can you
19.
please enlarge the photo? Sorry for interruption.
I will try, Vijayji.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we have Baba in the center with everybody else around him. If anybody recognizes anybody, you're welcome to name them. I'm assuming the people mentioned are there in the picture.
Adi's
Yeah,
there. Baidul's there.
yeah.
Papa Jesawala looks like.
Gustaji,
And Kakabaria.
Mm-hmm.
Arach sitting.
Even though he's in pain, you can see him smiling. Yeah.
Oh,
I think that person with tie is Jal Kerawala,
Okay.
back side,
I
left
think we
hand side of
I think Kaka and Chanji are there too.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Jal Kerawala and Tie behind Baba.
looking for Deshmukh. Yeah, it looks like the black cap, but
Hmm.
doesn't look like. I don't know. That was he must be too young. I have seen him in 60s. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Here is. I can feel. Deshmukh. Dr. Siddhi Deshmukh is behind Adike Irani. Can you see Adike Irani?
Yeah.
Yes, dish book there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So behind him in black cap, Dr. Deshmukh.
All right.
Okay. Uh,
After the darshan in Raipur, plans were set in motion to travel to Kashmir. Before proceeding to Kashmir, Baba sent away both Goher and Rakhma, the servant. Goher was to work in a Bombay hospital to get experience before joining Baba permanently, as this was what she wished. Baba then sent for Rano so there would be someone capable to the scheduled, assist the secluded Indian women Mandalay. On Wednesday, 9th August 1944, Baba left Raipur in Jal Kerawala's car with Mera, Mani, and Meru, Baidul, Kaka, Jalbai, Eric, and Rano followed in a station wagon. A boy was also with them for part of the journey. The other Mandali, Vishnu, Nilu, Krishna, Venkobarao, and Chanji, who had returned on the 6th, were sent ahead by train. Due to mechanical defects, both the car and the station wagon broke down numerous times. In the end, the car completely broke down along the way, and all had to go to the nearby dak bungalow at Murtazapur, where it took 2 days to have the repairs done. Baba had intended to proceed to Kashmir by car, contacting Mus along the way, but he now dropped the idea and decided to travel by train. On the evening of the day they were to leave, Baba suggested that the women be taken to see a film. Their nicer clothing was already packed, but everyone opened their trunks and got ready to go. Baba and all went to sit in the station wagon, but it wouldn't start. Baba was exasperated and, after several repeated attempts, said it was now too late to go. The women tried to get out but found that the back door would not open. Jal had to pull and wrench the doors open from inside when Rano pushing from with Rano pushing from inside. Late that night, after contacting a mast in the area, Baba left with the group for the train station. As the station was small, the train would stop only for 1 minute, and he warned them to hurry and board it as soon as it entered the station. Baba was with Kaka and Baidol, and Rano looked after the three Eastern women. It was past midnight when the train arrived, and Rano found the women's compartment locked. She banged on the doors and shouted for someone to open up, but all were fast asleep inside. She knocked on a window and then reached in and woke up a passenger, an overweight woman, who was kind enough to open the door for them. They managed to throw their luggage inside and hop on just as the train was about to leave. They arrived in Delhi on 14th August by the Grand Trunk Express and stayed the night with Keki Desai and his wife. Keki had been wont to keep Baba's visit an absolute secret. Janji had written, Baba will never forgive you two if ever you inform anyone about this. Jal Kerawala's car was meanwhile towed by bullocks to an automobile repair shop. After getting it repaired, Eric, Erich sent it back to Raipur and he left for Pune. In Delhi, Baba contacted the very high mass Niqabi Hafiz Ji, whom Baba remarked was the spiritual chargeman of Delhi since the death of the blind saint Hafiz Ji Nabina, whom Baba had also contacted. Niqabi Hafiz Ji was a mysterious saint who would always wear a cloth veil, a niqab, hence his name over his face, so that his face was seldom seen. On that note, we shall end today's reading here and we shall continue from 2423 next week. And we shall stop the recording now.